Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Katsuyama Japan. I may have bit off a little more than I should have in one video, but regardless, we're gonna have fun with it and create 3 enclosures for 4 different dinosaurs as we start what I hope will be a loop of carnivores on the back half of this park. With the recently added building tools and park upgrades from last week, there's a lot more to utilize now, but we'll get to all that shortly. For now, let's hop in and continue rebuilding this park in Jurassic World Evolution 3. So, as is traditional for me, we're omitting more viewing galleries in this park because they're unnecessary for every single habitat, they're way too bulky when you're constantly using them for every single small and medium dinosaur, and 3, I just don't like them. But we still need to have reasons for our guests to go to certain spaces in the park, and if there was nothing past these dinosaurs, we'd have a problem on our hands. Not the Velociraptor is out of its paddock for the 30th time problem, but even worse, we aren't making the type of money we need to fund this expensive carnivore park type of problem. The bottom part of this space will be with no viewing galleries, but it will have a Hyperloop station to take us to the second story and the second tier of this loop. With the lights now being able to be turned on and off during the day, we won't have our guests walking around in the dark, and we can make more walkable viewing spaces with what I'd feel is a more appropriate ceiling. The ceiling is also going to be a floor, so that we're going to have a space where theoretically guests would be able to walk above and then look down into both of these habitats on both sides of the gallery. All the animals on this side of the park are carnivores, and they all have slightly different habitat needs, so I want to separate them and make sure they all feel different. We've got chain fences on one side because the habitat is a little deeper on that side, but this one where the terrain is closer to guest level, we'll use some reinforced glass panels. Can't trust anyone, myself included, to not get carried away and stick their hand on the chain fence to get as close as possible to the dinosaurs. The lights do work during the day, but to make sure we get plenty of light down here, I also want to add a small skylight to the structure to get more of that natural light. When it all comes together, I think this is one of my favorite small additions to this structure. I did mention that we have a Hyperloop station to take us to this second level, but for me, this is not practical. It's more a path logic to get guests where they need to. In reality, I want the illusion that our guests can take a staircase to go up to that second level. No, we'll never see a guest take the stairs, but I am a firm believer in making something with this at least having the appearance of being practical in a dinosaur park with real dinosaurs, because that's realistic. The edges of the floor kind of suck, but it did give me an opportunity to use some of the cement trim and create a border around the stairs opening. Looking back, I probably should have a higher railing around this because some small child or adult on their phone is liable to fall down this staircase, and we probably don't want to be paying out those kind of legal battles regularly. When I started putting this together, I was feeling really good about myself, but one of the challenges I ran into was that my path down here wouldn't go all the way to the end of the Hyperloop station. The hitbox did me dirty, so I use a lot of planter boxes to fix things like this, and similarly went with a box of dirt. And by dirt I mean sand to help me out, but this one didn't have flowers or any foliage. This one I put a few dinosaur fossils, and I feel like I have done this a few different times in different parks already, but for the dinosaurs down here I felt like this was an appropriate decision. The second tier of this is going to be what helps us to get this park back to 5 stars. Japan needs to prioritize carnivores and shelter cover, so having a shelter up here to start is going to help us to keep everything level, and then also help us as we're going to create another incentive for our guests to go this direction. Eventually, I'll put a viewing gallery up here, but the other part of the Hyperloop station is also going to be up here. That's going to be at the end of this walkway that we're going to make here, and that I'm going to turn into a makeshift sort of abandoned dam wall barrier between this enclosure and then the one next to it. Of all the building pieces that we got with the Rebirth expansion, my favorite one of those is likely to be these abandoned, or maybe not abandoned to others, these dam walls that we have to use in our enclosures. And I think the biggest reason that I enjoy these has to do with the complexity meter and bringing that down. I've built dams myself and some other large walls, and while they're cool and fun, long walls eat at your complexity. But in reality, after this rework of the park, I'm still at only about a 30% complexity, and it's been really great to work through this. Less is more in the Katsuyama Japan park, and it's given me a lot more of incentive and a lot more ability to add some more carnivores to this in the future. So if you have ideas or concepts of plans that would be fun to bring to this park, I always enjoy that feedback, whether it's here or on TikTok, to help me to build this and get a little better every time. So now we can start adding in the dinosaurs here. We've got one of my favorite dinosaurs to add. The habitat to the right is going to be for both Coelophysis and Guanlong. I'll let you guess which one of those is my favorite. When most people think of tyrannosaurs, they typically think of T-Rex, the massive predators with big heads, small arms. Guanlong is a tyrannosaur, but it looks very different. It's much smaller, more agile, and it lived way before a lot of those traditional tyrannosaurs existed. Guanlong fossils were actually discovered in northwest China, and during the Jurassic, this would have been much more filled with rivers and forests. It looks a lot different than it does today, obviously. Now, we do have the Sichuan Basin where Guanlong could have gone in our parks, but that park is really designed for larger animals like sauropods, Giganotosaurus. It has the Mosasaurus, although if I'm being completely transparent, I'm seriously considering moving the Mosasaurus at some point. The problem is just figuring out where to put it when none of the campaign maps really give us a great open water location for a lagoon. The enclosure on the left is going to be for Deinonychus, and unlike the Guanlong enclosure, this is much more tailored towards a wetland environment. We've got plenty of marshes and shallow water for them to move around, all surrounded by natural rock basin that we built around the landscape. There are some trees and some thicker vegetation further away from the viewing area, but for the most part, I want to make sure guests have a good chance to actually spot the animal as they move around. Similar to what we did with the Dracorex and the Dimetrodons last time, I want to build out the gate of this enclosure here with the dynamic light so our rangers actually can see where they're going, but I want to just make sure that these gates look a little bit better than just having a random gate around as guests are walking around the sides of this here. This is a huge win for me, having the dynamic lights to make these a little more elevated so when our rangers go through them. If I could have hid the gate here, I would have, but since this is going to be a loop of carnivores, this needs to be built out a little more so it wasn't just some boring fence. It's now just a boring building. And I think that this setting for this enclosure here really works for Deinonychus. The fossil evidence suggests that Deinonychus lived in environments with river systems and floodplains, and also the environment needs, when I put this into the game, tell me that I need wetlands and cover and these kind of things. But Deinonychus is actually from the western United States, or where it was found, so while this isn't a perfect recreation of early Cretaceous North America, the marshes, the water features, everything here I felt like was appropriate for one of the more famous predators in all of dinosaurs, even if we mislabel it for different movies for various reasons that we won't get into today. Guanlongs and the Deinonychus, actually the Guanlong needs live prey, but a couple of these will need some meat feeders regardless, so we're going to put some in there, we're going to cover them. We're going to have a few small different covers and shade for these animals over here. We want to make sure they have some spaces, especially in areas where we don't have a lot of trees, that we can have it for our dinosaurs to get out of the heat. I don't know how hot it actually is in Katsuyama, Japan, but let's just cover our bases. Also, I'm going to create a man-made waterfall area here because we had some water that was up higher. It didn't really make sense for it not to have some way that it's getting there. So we've got some pipes in our wall here that are letting water down to our man-made waterfall for our Guanlong. But now we're just going through the habitat, and it's mostly finished. Just want to spend a little more time adding some of the smaller details around the viewing area. Honestly, these are some of my favorite parts of building parks because it's the little touches that really make everything feel a little more believable. You put the bones on it, and then we put everything else around it to really build this out. We're going to add some planters, some benches, some signage, some decorative pieces around the path, and none of these things are going to completely change the park, but they do help turn it from just a collection of dinosaurs into a place that feels like guests actually want to go and spend their time. As always, when I go back, it's always fun to look at these things and feel like this is a space they would actually enjoy being. And while I'm working on these finishing touches, if you're enjoying this build so far, consider hitting that like button. It really does help the channel grow and let me know what you've enjoyed with this style of content. Building parks like this was one of my favorite things to do in Jurassic World Evolution 3, especially when we can mix in the creative side of building with some of the dinosaur facts and history behind the animals that we're placing. If you got ideas for future parks or future plans for habitats or even just specific dinosaurs you'd like to see, be sure to leave those in the comments as well. A lot of my favorite builds have actually come from suggestions from people that have left on previous videos, both again here or on TikTok. For now, let's just keep adding some final details, finish polishing, and then moving on to our final animal here, which is going to be the Austroraptor. Now, Austroraptor is one of those dinosaurs that I don't think gets nearly enough attention and was part of the Wetlands DLC a few months ago, so not everyone actually gets the opportunity to play with these animals. In the enclosure, I want it to feel a little bit different, but still blend in at least a little of what we've already created in the sense of using some similar build pieces and similar colors. So this maybe feels more industrial to start. I definitely didn't want this to become a flashy shot because I think that this right now more matches the vibe we're going for. But we did get the dynamic lights, and my favorite way to use these now is to make these smaller display cases on the outsides of some of these viewing galleries. You can actually see these during the day, and This will become a more regular occurrence. While it might not incentivize me to create 1,012 different viewing galleries, it does make them slightly more appealing to me. And so I really have a lot of fun building these small spaces in the front of these viewing galleries here. You can kind of see on the front of this building, we have a little bit of purple. Everything in Jurassic Park Japan, or whatever we're going to call this park here, has some element of purple going through it. So this is the very little bit of purple that we actually have in this part of the park. It's just a few of these little banners. But if you have other ideas to elevate these, again, always feel free to throw those in the comments because I'm always looking to upgrade these. The enclosure is going to be sunk down slightly, not to the same level as the Guanlong or the Deinonychus, but because we aren't going to have an incredibly high fence around this habitat, I don't want to create the risk of an Austroraptor jumping up and climbing out of their new home. From a park design perspective, these are also going to be incredibly important animals. The way we've laid out the path, the guests are naturally going to walk towards this habitat as they move deeper into the park because of that viewing gallery. So the Austroraptors are essentially becoming one of the focal points of this entire section, even though they might not traditionally be headliners, but they're definitely the dinosaur that is going to be pulling guests from one area to the next. And honestly, I think that that's fitting. The Austroraptor isn't the first dinosaur people think about, but it is one of the more unique members of the raptor family. Between its size, its unusual skull, and the possibility that it spent a lot of time hunting around water, it feels like the perfect species to anchor this side of the park. Part of what made Austroraptor really unique was its skull. Unlike most raptors, it had long and a narrow snout filled with relatively small teeth, which led many paleontologists to conclude fish may have made up a significant portion of its diet. So we'll need to make sure we include plenty of fish feeders and water here for their habitat. We're approaching the end of our habitat here, and while we're just making a few more tweaks to elevate the Austroraptor habitat, we're definitely not done with this park yet. The next major challenge for this area is adding the last 3 dinosaurs that I know I need to be part of this loop: Carnivores, Kyanzosaurus, and Utyrannus. And honestly, I haven't completely figured out how I'm going to tackle that yet. What I do know is that the next time we're back in Katsuyama, we're going to be tackling those final major predators and getting this loop one step closer to completion. As always, if you enjoyed the build, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear which of today's enclosures was your favorite and how you think we should handle Carnivores, Kyanzosaurus, and Utyrannus moving forward. Thank you all so much for watching, enjoy the game, and I will see you on the next build.